People who did the nasty with their step-sibling. What happened afterwards? Let's find out. Story 1. My older brother dated our older stepsister. He was 15 to 16. She was 30 to 32. My mom was livid about it. Her dad pretended it wasn't happening. She was a bit of a sugar mama, bought him lots of nice stuff, flew him places. She took him to parties and did drugs with etc. Slept with him. My mom thinks she dated my brother just to spite her. I don't know how valid that is, wouldn't surprise me. But my mom was also a piece of work, and to get back at her and her husband for allowing it, she slept with her stepson. Story 2. My parents are actually step-siblings. They began dating when they were teenagers, and when their parents met they fell in love and got married, making my mom and dad step-siblings. They ended up moving in together since they were both still living with their parents, and my grandparents just let them share a room. It's always been a joke in our family that my mom is my aunt, my dad is my uncle, and my brothers are my cousins. To clarify, my grandparents didn't fall in love until after my parents had started dating, and my parents broke up after becoming step-siblings, but not before my mom got pregnant with me. Both of my brothers are half-brothers, so I'm the only one in this predicament. My parents haven't been together for 23 years, but they are still step-siblings to this day. Here's a fun little story, since this is blowing up. My parents broke up before finding out that my mom was pregnant with me. One of my half-brothers is only 2 months younger than me. Once my brother's mom became pregnant, she moved into my dad's room, causing my dad to have to live with 2 separate women both pregnant with his babies at the same time. The whole situation was messed up. Story 3. I slept with my stepsister. She came in town for visit her dad, and when I went outside to help bring luggage and she gave me the F me eyes, as soon as she saw me, and instantly I knew I was in trouble. For a week and a half I kept being polite and trying to remain distant because I had been warned by my stepdad and her brothers to not even look in her direction, not bring any friends over, not do anything wrong, and I had absolutely no intention of doing so. But it was the first time I had ever had anyone want me that badly, and I gave in, and we secretly got together for the remainder of the month she spent in town. We were both young and dumb and fell in love, and thought we hid it well, but when they found out after she left I got my ass beat. For a few years they wouldn't let her visit, and we kept in touch. Then after college I moved to where she lived, and we have been together ever since. 11 years now, and we have a 5-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son. Everyone is completely fine with it now, and we make jokes about it all the time. Story 4. Oh God, this is just bad. Okay, so it wasn't my sibling, but a step-cousin on my stepfather's side of the family. There is a group of kids, and a group of us all around the same age. Whenever he have get-togethers, we teens always hung out until recently when we joined the adults. But I was 15, during my peak I guess you could say, and we all decided to play truth or dare. Now for context, I joined their lives after they were already 12 or so, and I was the only white guy. I was more their best friend of sorts than a relative, and I had been previously caught checking out one of the girls on the last visit. In my defense, she had worn a tight dress at that time which showed off her assets. So the 2 other guys naturally made me kiss her. For their own reasons, I suppose. Me and her kinda had the same expression of, okay then, game on. So we did it. We were the 2 ballsy ones of the group, and usually didn't back down from a challenge. Everyone did their hoots, and when it was her turn, they told her to make out with me for 5 minutes. Again, same mutual non-spoken agreement, and that happened. This escalated until it got to them handing us a Johnny, and saying go into the other room and smash. There was a mild hesitation, but we both, again, just non-verbally said F it. Story 5. Obligatory not me, or even quite step-sibling, but still a fun story. One of my dad's best friends, let's call him Rob, was partially crazy, admitted to a mental hospital briefly for running around town in tidy whities and trying to get into his ex-wife's house. I grew up around this guy, so it was great. He's dead now though, so the fun times are over. Anyways, Rob and his ex did have a daughter. Well, his brother and his bro's wife split at some point, and they have a son, Rob's nephew. One thing obviously leads to another, and Rob and his ex-sister-in-law get together, and you guessed it, get married. So now Rob's nephew is now also his stepson, and his daughter is also now stepdaughter to her aunt. Story 6. I slept with 2 of my stepsisters. My mom had been dating a guy for about 10 years. I had met one of his daughters when I was in high school years ago, when we all went on a family vacation. Let's call her Sister 1. I had a feeling she liked me. Playing footsie under table, etc., but nothing came of it, and I never saw her again until I was in college. One day I'm stuck in a part of town real late after the train stopped running. No way to get home. I remember my mom's boyfriend lives around there. I walk to his house, only his daughter is home. Mind you, we're both about 21 now. She lets me in, and we start hanging out and drinking. One thing leads to another, and we F. At some point her father came home, but he didn't say anything, and just went to bed. Second story is about the sister of the girl mentioned above. Let's call her sister too. We went to the same college. She was a year ahead of me, and was supposed to be my mentor. I ended up messing around with all her friends from the dorms, because I was cute little brother. But she was always just big sis. Fast forward 2 years later, we're at a house party at the Sister 1 apartment. After a night of drinking it winds down and everyone leaves. Sister number 1 goes into her room with her boyfriend. So sister number 2 and me are alone in the living room talking. The drunk me starts asking about her old friends, and the conversation turns dirty somehow. Then we start kissing, and make our way to a spare bedroom. We do it. No one ever knew. We did it a few other times after that too. My relationship with them is great. My mom and their dad got married not long after. I hang out with them and treat them like my sisters. The only awkward moment was at a family cookout when I got drunk and sat in front of them both and said, "You know, I messed around with both of you, right?" Yes. I think I may have had a drinking problem. Story 7. So I wasn't the one who slept with my own relative, but I was involved in a, let's say, situation. My childhood friend, Reba, was in love with this dude Greg. Greg was a typical American dude, average looks, liked football, school, girls repeat. Reba was gorgeous. 12 out of 10 handily. Would totally risk TMJ for her, if you catch my drift. The issue was, though, that she was boring as F. Favorite color? White. Favorite food? Iron Kids bread. Just so dull. Thus, not many people were into her, and I'm not talking just romantically. She had few friends and no dates and no Greg. So one day Reba and I are walking home from school, and we see Greg on her front steps. Reba is shaking with excitement, anticipation. She's probably thinking, #this is my moment, or something. We reach Greg and Reba can't talk, so I ask him what he's doing there. He looks straight at Reba and asks, "Did you know that our parents were doing the nasty?" She did not. Fast forward some months, and their parents get married, and they all move in together. Reba gives up the dream of Greg, because pseudo-family and all that. Life goes on, and everyone kind of just goes with it. The three of us become friends, and figure out we have stuff in common. We are cordial to one another at school, etc. So senior year starts, and my stupid stuff catches feelings for Reba. She's no longer talking about Greg all the time, so I'm learning more about her as a person, and she's kinda dope in addition to being Eliza Dushku hot. We get trashed off of Smirnoff Ice, and I make a move, and she goes for it. Maybe it's hormones, maybe it's the genuine love of friendship, but something carries us out of friendship and into running with scissors. We're going at it all the time. My hands are barely on anything. Naturally, one day, we get down to it somewhere we shouldn't and Greg catches us. Now Reba is sufficiently interesting to him. No one would care if either of us is queer, but it's high school goddammit, so we're trying to just avoid the convo. Greg promises to keep his trap shut. Time passes. It's winter break and someone has a party. Small towns, what you gonna do? Greg and Reba and I are all going. We play flip cup and quarters and beer pong, and never have I ever. I'm sitting in between the two of them, and not surprisingly, I'm experiencing feelings. They're both touching me, we're all tipsy but not drunk, I know it's about to go down. Reba and I run off to find a room, and start making out. Greg finds us a few minutes later, and sits next to us on the bed. I'm all in at this point, so I start kissing Reba again, and Greg just watches. I catch on and pat a spot on the bed closer to us, which he settles into. I take one in my hand, and replace his. The rest just kind of comes together. We have a great time, and no combination of coupling is overlooked. It's a magical night for all. We leave our friend's house, and all go back to Greg and Reba's. Reba passes out, but I can't sleep. I run into Greg in the kitchen, and we get to talking. He says that he will never forget tonight, and he's always been into me. I ask about Reba, and he says, "Yeah, that was weird, but she is so hot though." He knows that she should be off limits, so he plans to make sure this was a one-time thing with her. We talk and have a good rhyme, and then we end up in his room, and passing out together. I wake up the next morning, and hear some weird sounds. I look over and Reba is doing the nasty with her step-brothers. So much for a one-time thing. I know I shouldn't be annoyed because I'd just been where she is, but I didn't like what I saw. I knew she was going to catch feelings, and it would be a real goddamn problem. I was right. She was even more in love with him after that. Reba would go on and on about how he was the one. Greg was not feeling the same, but he was a teenage boy with an eager partner 10 feet away. They went at it like rabbits until graduation. I hooked up with each of them off and on, but not together. That would have been too weird. They went to separate colleges, and I went to the same school as Greg. We didn't date or anything else at that point, but I heard stories from girls who dated him about how close he was with his family, and how he'd go home all the time to be with them, and it was so cute. I knew the truth, though. He was going home to bang his sister. Midway through college, Reba got pregnant. Greg wanted to bail but couldn't because they were family. Baby is born, and as the kid grows up, he looks just like Greg. The parents figure it out, and all hell breaks loose. They kick the kids out and refuse to talk to them for a year or more. Greg shows up at my dorm trashed in senior year of college. One more time for old time's sake? Reddit, I'm not a smart woman. We have a great night, and I never see him again. Last I heard, Reba's an astrophysicist. Greg is a stay-at-home dad to their 3 kids. I match with him on Tinder regularly. So this is a true story. I was the stereotypical bisexual when I was a teenager. This was one of my formative experiences with for sure. 1A, I did write some decent literature as a teen. 1B, there is more to Reba's story. It's much like Michelle Abel frames in her back cover blurb. Not sure how I'll share, but I'll find a way soon. Names have been changed, but Reba was her cat's name. Greg is a cheat. Per small-town gossip, Reba knows but doesn't care. She's wrestling with her 20-something female lab assistant and living the dream. It's a good old-fashioned American stay-together-for-the-tax-breaks situation. Story 8. Finally my moment to shine. So my mom was dating this guy she met on Match.com around the time that I was 15 years old. His name was Stan, and his daughter was hot. My mom and Stan had been dating for about 3 months before I met her. He lived about 2 hours away, so he usually came up on the weekends to visit. I actually met Stan Jr., his son, a few weeks prior. Him and I hit it off, so they thought, why not get the whole family together? So the next weekend we went on a family trip to a casino where I met her and Stan's younger son. Upon entering the hotel room, she decided it was necessary to proclaim that she gets whatever bed I'm sleeping. Her brother doesn't think this is weird at all, which should have been my first sign. We end up having a fun night, sleeping in the same bed with mild, innocent contact throughout the night. The next day when they left and we went home, I was devastated. This is the first girl to show any kind of interest in me. I'm obsessed. Over the next 8 months, Stan and my mom would continue to date. He would bring his kids to our house for the weekend, and we would all sleep in my room. Her brother on the floor, and her in the bed with me. Often. Nobody questioned this. We started messing around pretty regularly at this point. Making out and hand stuff mostly. One night we were awake really late watching music videos. Her brother was asleep on the floor, and it just happened. She looked at me, I looked at her, and things moved from there. It was dope. I did my thing, and then instantly leaned over the bed to make sure Stan Jr. was still sleeping, only to see his traumatized eyes wide open staring at the TV. He looked sad, like he wanted to cry. I kept that part to myself, and let the night ride itself out. Enter 2 weeks later when my mom tells me that Stan has proposed, and they are getting married. I wasn't upset or even care much until my friends, who I had obviously bragged to, started making fun of me for doing it with my sister. This carried on for about 3 more weeks, until Stan Jr. told his dad what me and his sister had been up to. He broke up with my mom the next day, and asked for the ring back. Story 9. My parents separated when I was very young, and I had been living with my father, who wasn't seeing anyone. My mom had remarried by the time I started high school, and where she lived was a really good school district, so my parents agreed that I would start living with her. My stepsister was 2 years younger than me, and we didn't really get along too great, so we mostly avoided each other. The first 2 years went by without any incident whatsoever. This was back in 96 foot, and we only had one computer, which was in my room. As a teenage boy navigating the early internet, you can imagine what I was getting up to in my room with the computer. The thing was, since she just started high school, sometimes my stepsister needed to use the computer too. I didn't have a lock on my door, and she would just barge in, sometimes catching me mid-session. Of course I would scramble to cover up and close the windows on the computer I had open, but you could totally tell what I was doing. Like I said, we didn't get along, so rather than any wild stuff happening, she would yell at me, tell me I was gross, and even parade around the house telling my mom and stepdad what I was doing up there. They didn't care or say anything to me about it, but I was mortified, so I tried to be more discreet and only do that late at night. I thought I was getting away with my late night stuff, but it turned out my stepsister knew how to check browser history, which back then didn't even occur to me. The same thing would happen after she'd use the computer. She'd run around calling me disgusting and telling everyone that my history was full of videos. It pissed me off and embarrassed me, but what could I do? One day we were hanging out playing a game on the computer, which was pretty rare for us to do together. It was some game kinda like life, where each player gets a turn trying to get a better job and make more money and stuff. It was actually a pretty great night for us, because we were having fun playing this game and watching Jumanji on VHS, and actually getting along well. I left to go downstairs and get a snack, and when I came back up she had pulled up the porn site I frequented. I don't remember the site, but it was just text links that took you to pictures, because that's all we had back then. I ran over and yelled at her and tried to close the window, but she just started laughing and told me she wanted to look at it. I was super embarrassed, but she wasn't really insulting me about it, just casually commenting on the pictures and saying the people in them were weird or whatever. Eventually I relaxed, and we both just casually went through the pics commenting on dumb stuff like people's haircuts or whatever. It was totally making me horny, but absolutely nothing happened aside from looking, and we eventually just closed it. After that I started thinking about her in that way. Our relationship got better, and we would hang out a lot more watching movies in my room, playing games on the computer, and going through pictures laughing together for hours late at night just making fun of them, or saying if they were hot or gross. We started doing this more regularly, watching a movie in my room or playing on the computer, and it always led to looking at worse videos. It was intense. The thing is, we never kissed or did anything intimate at this point. One night we stole some booze from our parents' liquor cabinet and watched Happy Gilmore in my room. Neither of us had ever really gotten drunk before, and we really overdid it. At some point during the movie it got hot. Honestly, it's a bit of a blur. The next day we both pretended that we couldn't remember what happened because we drank too much. I was really freaked out about the whole thing, and we didn't hang out again for a while. Eventually we started watching movies together again. We barely drank anything, and I think we were both just pretending to be drunk as an excuse, but we started getting fidgety. The next day we both said we drank too much and couldn't remember anything, but after that the floodgates were open, and we kept doing the same thing over and over. We were so dumb and reckless. This went on for the rest of the time I was in high school, even when we each had been dating other people. There was never anything romantic about it. We were just using each other to get off and have fun. Eventually I went away to college, and for the first year nothing happened, even when I came home. Then the next Christmas break I came home, and one day we were talking about how we used to mess all the time. It led to more things. I tried to start things up one Christmas after college had ended for me, and she was back home, but she turned me down because she was in a serious relationship. Now we're both married, and she even has a kid. We've talked about it all, because she was worried I might have feelings for her or something, but we both realized that it was never anything like that. We also agreed never to tell anyone about it. Story 10. Growing up I knew two sisters who would fool around at parties. One was a little older than the other, so I always assumed the younger one did it to be included, and the older one did it for attention. I knew their oldest sister pretty well, and she always shrugged it off because they never went further than making out and light groping. She was way more reserved than the other two, but all the girls dealt with some level of abnormal Norte energy. It's just that for her it was more of a shy curiosity. I knew the younger sisters well enough to end up being the one they'd call to pick them up from parties gone bad, because they knew I always looked out for their older sister in school, and I wouldn't tell their parents the trouble they got into. Which eventually meant they confided in me about some things here and there, mainly with their struggle to understand guys their age and navigate the hormonal fools. Hence why I sometimes had to pick them up from parties gone bad, meaning sausage fests where they felt uncomfortable. By the time the older of the two was graduating, I learned they actually did a whole lot more behind closed doors than just making out. They were close enough in age to have shared a bedroom and been best friends most of their childhood, and they were a lot alike, so they were inseparable. Two extremely curious girls with little understanding of the Norte norms staying together and being as close as conjoined twins is a weird cocktail of hormones and naivety. So things happened over the years until it became commonplace for them, and kept happening till their late teens. Honestly, to this day they both are easily categorized as two of the most drop-dead gorgeous women I've ever personally known in my entire life. So it's almost like some strange taboo fantasy, except that they're not exactly cliché Norte types. I mean, they were a little loose with the behavior between each other, and obviously enjoyed showing off, but they weren't actually Norte apart from that. It's this weird concoction of curiosity and vanilla reserved attitudes all in one for both of them, and it would totally seem like a contradiction until you met them. It's hard to explain. One is married with 2 kids and works as a makeup artist for television and movies now, and the other is a structural engineer who ended up becoming a high school math teacher, because that was the kind of job she always wanted. Unfortunately, the oldest sister, who was far more reserved overall, ended up going through a lot and having what I'd call a mental breakdown, and she has a shaky relationship with the rest of the family now. Story 11. My father passed away when I was 16. I won't get into details why, but my mom and dad were happily married. My mom moved on relatively fast, which kind of messed me up a little bit. I was super confused as to how. Anyway, my mom, let's call her Laura, met a guy named, let's say, Joe. Joe was cool, nice, and very respective. He had a daughter, whose name was Lexi. Lexi was 16 as well as I was at the time, and we got really close because her mother had passed away due to similar circumstances. We got very close, and I eventually developed a crush on her. I didn't think too much of it because it wasn't technically my stepsister. One night we got pretty drunk in my room, and we kissed. It was a long night after that. We even started making out. The next morning she came and had the talk with me, and it was super uncomfortable to say the least. It turns out she had similar feelings, and that same day we hooked up. I was her first, and she was mine. And it felt amazing, physically and mentally. I felt like I loved this girl, and I did. We secretly dated for about a year until our parents announced they were getting married. This left us with another weird conversation. Should we stay together? Should we come out and say that we've been dating? All of the questions. We loved each other after all. First love, etc. We decided to just leave it to future us. Well, when that time came, we tried to keep going. Even if we told them we had been dating, it still would have been weird. A few months into their marriage, we broke it off. We were very sad and felt like we couldn't tell anyone. We couldn't, and we had to deal with it on our own. It was sad, and to this day, 2 years later, there's still some awkward tension between us. I moved out, and so did she. We only ever speak during family gatherings and on Facebook. Story 12. First of all, just for some background, my mom died right when I was born. She was actually really, really hot. But this isn't about her. I guess that's messed up to say, but whatever. I actually grew up with my dad's family, because my dad has all sorts of emotional issues, and he bailed before I was born. So you can see my childhood was really kind of messed up. Anyways, growing up I feel like there was always a lot of distance between me and my sister. When I was about 17 or 18, I first noticed that my sister was a hottie. I don't want to go into too many details about it, but basically what happened is that I accidentally found a video that she made of herself. I knew she didn't make it for me, but I thought she was so beautiful that I watched it twice. I probably would have watched it a hell of a lot more, except that like right around the time I found the video, all this crazy stuff went down and I had to leave home. My dad's family, who I was staying with, got in bad trouble with the law. I never talk about it. Zul. I was totally lusting after my sister at that point. She was also having bad trouble with the law. She was actually in custody when I left home. My friend and I went to go pick her up. When I saw her that day, after seeing the video, I have to be honest, I just wanted to poke her brains out. Looking back on it now, it's pretty messed up, but I think she had feelings for me too. She actually kissed me right after we came to get her. And it wasn't a sisterly kiss, you know? I mean, it wasn't like ridiculously Norte or anything, but it definitely wasn't sisterly. After we left, we all went to crash with my sister's friends. On the trip there, my friend sort of implied that he wanted to get with my sister, and I got a little jealous. He's a good-looking guy, and even though she was my sister, I just felt like he was competition. Not much else happened between us for a while except some hugging. Pretty much everyone in my life at that point was wanted by the government, so we all moved around a lot. I'm not saying that I'm proud of it or anything, but it was kind of an awesome time. My friend and my sister never hooked up, I don't think, but I thought there was some serious tension going on between them. It was around that time that I got really badly hurt in an accident. It was messed up. I almost died. But when I was in recovery, my sister came to see me, and out of the clear blue sky she started gives me this awesome, slow kiss on the lips. Sadly, although I guess for the best, nothing ever came of it. We spent some time apart, and I started to get really religious, so I tried not to think of her that way. It was actually going well for a long time, like I was totally over her. But I have to say, like a year or so after all that stuff went down, we were out sailing, not like a date or anything romantic like that, and she was wearing like the hottest bikini I've ever seen, and it brought back all the old feelings. Sigh. A little while later, she actually wound up with my friend from before. I can't say I was surprised. But even after she was shacking up with my friend, there was one time we were at a party. My friend was inside, and my sister and I were outside alone. It was a really intimate moment. I think something might have happened, except that I killed the mood when I told her that Darth Vader was our father and that I had to go face him. Story 13. I hooked up with my stepsister. I was 16 at the time, a few years ago, junior year of high school. I was pretty shy, but getting close to college, my parents pushed me to join a club to help me socialize, so I did what any shy needy guy would do, and joined the gaming club. Now I'm thinking it's gonna be other shy nerds, neckbeards and lame kawaii girls. Which it mostly was, but there was a cute girl in there too. I had seen her on campus before, but my friend Josh, who knew everyone, said she supposedly had a BF at another high school. Beyond that and her name, Claire, I didn't know much about her. Anyways, the first few months of the semester go by, and we didn't really talk much beyond club meetings. When the holidays got closer, my parents decided to host a Christmas party and wanted it to be huge. Their friends came over to help set up, and talked a lot about their new neighbors coming to the party, and how it was just a single mom and her daughter, who was a year younger than me. So of course it was Claire. I was freaking out at this point, but nothing I could do. I texted Josh, asking if he knew about Claire's dad. He hadn't heard of him except he apparently had left them a long time ago. That evening, sure enough, Claire and her mom came over. I was of course expected to entertain Claire all night. Since we both liked video games, we went back to my room to play something. After arguing over action-adventure versus RPG, we decided to settle it in Super Mario World. Whoever could go the most levels without dying. After a couple hours, I gave up trying to beat someone clearly on my level. We started laying down and just talking about stuff. Eventually, I asked about her dad. She said it was kinda weird. She never met him, but felt like she had. She had this crumpled photo in her wallet of her dad, mom and herself as a baby when she was born. I couldn't talk. The man in the picture, Claire's father, was my dad. I just looked at her and sighed. I told her, "Claire, I think you're so funny and cool and honestly really cute, but don't let that distract you from the fact that in 1998, The Undertaker threw mankind off Hell in a Cell and plummeted 16 foot through an announcer's table." Story 14. My grandparents were cousins, lol. We're not from a culture where marrying your cousin is common. White British, but not from Norwich. It's kind of a cute story, though, all things considered. They had only met a few times until they met at their aunt's party. She was 18, and he was 22. He chased her for a bit, but she didn't go out on a date with him until she found out he had his own car. I always loved her retelling of the story, as she was what you'd consider a stereotypical gran, but she always giggled like she was so naughty back then for only taking interest when she heard he had a car. They went on a date, and she said that she knew that he was the one, and they got married a year later. None of their descendants have shown any ill effects of their union aside from our gills and webbed hands/feet, but I consider that an advantage rather than a disability. Sadly, she died 15 years ago. After 50 years of marriage, my granddad has never been the same. Story 15. I made a throwaway to answer this, because I actually have. Jack and I are technically full legal siblings. I was adopted as a toddler. He's our parents' biological child. So we are 0% genetically related, but were raised together by the same two parents in the same household. I have never been treated differently for being adopted, and my brothers consider me their full sister just as much as they consider each other to be their full brothers. We are not quite a full year and a half apart in age. I am older. Our older brother, also our parents' biological child, is a year older than me, but he is not particularly part of this story. So when I say younger brother, I'm not talking about a kid. I am talking about someone who is essentially my age, and we were always even in the same grade because I was held back due to speech difficulties and trouble reading. I have some minor learning issues as well as being hard of hearing. Our family is very close, to the point where we were teased about it as children, but not physically affectionate, except for my little brother and me. We constantly cuddled as children, which I think probably helped me a lot. I was adopted as a toddler because I entered foster care out of a hellish situation, and while I don't actively remember my abuse from my birth family, I know it really affected me, especially in the early years. When my parents, foster parents at the time, first took me in, I bonded with the dog first, and then with my little brother. We think it's because Jack was a baby, and therefore non-threatening. I bonded with my parents eventually, but that took more time. So the fact that Jack was always so affectionate and protective toward me was a really good thing for both of us. The only two touchy-feely people in a family of stoic New England wasps gotta stick together, right? Our parents always assumed the bond between my brothers and me, and especially between Jack and me, would turn to the usual sibling bickering and squabbling, but that was never really the case. The boys would fight with each other, slam doors, kick each other out of the room they shared, etc., but I, being the typical middle child, I suppose, kept the peace. When our older brother would kick Jack out of the room after a bad argument, he would end up in bed with me. Not in a weird way, we'd just cuddle and fall asleep, usually with him as the big spoon. Also, I used to have nightmares, and he would come sleep with me then too, to help me fall asleep. Again, not weird, just sweet. Of course we did I assume this is pretty normal. Show me yours and I'll show you mine kind of stuff, but what was less normal, I guess, was that our curiosity about each other persisted into puberty. As we got to late elementary/early middle school, Jack would sometimes pop a boner while we cuddled, and it never bothered me. I'll spare you too many details, but this pretty quickly developed into us figuring out that he could solve the problem by grinding against me, and that if he did it a certain way, it felt really good for me too. This evolved much more. I don't remember ever feeling dirty about it or feeling like it was wrong, just that it was a secret. The Norte moves for the first time when he was 14, and I was 15. We were in 8th grade, maybe the summer before 9th. I was on birth control, already due to severe cramps. We waited until our parents went out of town for a few days. Our grandmother was dying, and Mom and Dad were out of state helping get her affairs in order. My brothers and I were 16, 14, and 15, and our oldest brother had just gotten his conditional license, so leaving us home alone was no big deal, especially since we knew all our neighbors and had people to check in on us. Plus, we were pretty responsible kids. They knew they could count on us to actually attend school every day, not throw a rager, keep the house clean, etc. for a few days, and to call a neighbor or friend's parent if we needed anything. Our first full day on our own was a Saturday. Our older brother went out to dinner and a movie with his then girlfriend, now wife, leaving Jack and me at home. He ended up sleeping over at her place, which he was expressly forbidden from doing, but we kind of had a feeling he would, and there was no way we were going to narc on him. As it turns out, our older brother lost his V that night, too, in the back of my now sister-in-law's car, but that's another story. The first time was actually pretty good for a first time. We ended up doing it twice that night, and again in the morning before our older brother returned from his own night of teenage passion. It wasn't awkward. This was Jack, who had held me in his arms almost daily for our whole lives. This was the person I loved most in the world and would do anything for. He was a sensitive person, still is. I felt cared for and loved, and it felt extremely natural. We have a deeply empathic bond anyway, and are highly sensitive to each other in any context, but it is magnified significantly in bed. Adding this because it feels important to say. I don't remember our first time as being a flurry of passion or hormones, or even particularly of attraction. This is difficult to describe to someone who has not experienced it, but it felt like a natural progression of the way we had always shown each other love. Physical affection. We have both experienced passion-fueled movements with people to whom we were attracted, and both agree that kind of passion driven by attraction and desire feels very different from what we do with each other as siblings. The next morning, our brother came home and told us all about the loss of his V. He described a hormonal, passionate, fumbling, awkward encounter between two people in the back of a car, a more typical teenage experience. We had a Norte relationship until we graduated, and have had some isolated incidents since then. We are now 28 and almost 27, both divorced, for reasons unrelated to our relationship. His wife was unfaithful, and my husband was a story for another day, and still occasionally express our love in a further way. More important than that, though, we are still very loving and caring to each other, as much if not more so than before we began to have the nasty. When his ex-wife left him, he came and stayed with me for a few months, and I helped care for his infant son, as I was out of work at the time. When I needed help moving one state over for grad school in the fall of last year, he took time off of work to move me. We really love each other, And I would say the love is the least important part of that love. If anything, it only bolsters what was already there and is much more important. The love we feel as siblings and lifelong best friends. I hope that answers your question. I am open to respectful follow-up questions from Opie or anyone else. Much love.